This pattern of history really begins in the heart of people who have been divided for a long time. Those Jews. The Jews this, the Jews that. And in the, as I search through my notes, in the second pattern that I would like to address is the pattern of ancient rivalries. The book of Purim, or the animosity between Haman and the Jewish people, started at the birth of Jacob and Esau. That's how ancient the rivalry is. And we know that God told Jacob's mother that two nations are in her womb, and that, to paraphrase, there was going to be a struggle between the two nations. And we know that when the twins came out, Esau came out first, and Jacob was holding on to his heel. So the word Esau can mean, or the word, the name for Jacob can mean heel as well, not the word for Esau. And so what happened is that eventually, we know that between the two boys, there was a rivalry, there was deception, there was jealousy, there was the father who favored Esau, and the mother who favored Jacob. And the rivalry continues in the book of Exodus. What we could see is that when Israel left Egypt, and you'll see in the 17th chapter of the book of Shemot, that Amalek came and attacked Israel. Now, the whole context of the attack was that instead of attacking the warriors, the soldiers, which was pretty normal, there were rules of war historically, what they did was they came from behind and they attacked the people who were a little bit weaker, the stragglers. And it's pretty much a biblical principle that the enemy is going to attack you at your weak point and not at your strong point. So there was a battle, and two times in the Bible, and I'm paraphrasing the two places in Scripture that refers to this battle. One, and obviously in Exodus 17, it tells us to remember what Amalek did to you. And then there's another scripture that says, God will always be at war with Amalek. Well, Amalek, or the Amalekites, are descendants of Esau. One of Esau's sons had a concubine named Timnah, and she had a son named Amalek. And there is a story in the Midrash, or I'm going to say how I understand the Midrash, it's a rabbinic way of trying to uncover and explain the reason why someone might act in a certain way, or to give some insight into some of the stories of the Bible and that aren't actually recorded in the text itself. So according to the Midrash, the mother of Amalek wanted to convert to Judaism, formally convert to Judaism. And for some unknown reason, she was rejected and she was not allowed to convert. So the story goes that she raised her son Amalek to despise and hate Jewish people because she was wounded and she was rejected. And the her woundedness and her sense of rejection was carried from generation to generation to generation, so that over a period of time, in the minds and the hearts of Amalek, all that they had in their heart for the Jewish people was vengeance for being rejected. And of course, we know that people do this all the time. They get rejected, or there's a misunderstanding, something happens that doesn't make you so happy. You assign blame to the other person, you're hurt, you're wounded. Then you pass on those feelings to your children, to your grandchildren, and then they pass them on, and that becomes part of your spiritual heritage. So we see that in this story, that one of the motives of the Amalekites attacking the Jewish people during the going out from Egypt was this pent-up, bitter feeling towards the Jewish people that began in the mother of the Amalekites. Later on, we see in the book of Esther that Haman was a descendant of the Amalekites. So for centuries, this unbridled hatred began to build and build and build. And it didn't have to happen, but we have a little piece of history known as the rebellion of King Shaul, Melech Yisrael. And so he was getting ready to engage in a battle with a king known as Agag, who was an Amalekite. And the prophet Shmuel or the prophet Samuel came to him and said that when you have this battle, the principle of cherem, of basically total destruction, which is a hard biblical doctrine to understand, which I hope to explain sometime in future programs. He was to destroy the possessions, the cattle, just basically the entire nation, and also the king. Well, King Shaul was disobedient, and he kept some of the animals, the livestock, for himself, and he did not kill King Agag. And so apparently that he let King Agag go, he escaped, and during the time that he escaped, because eventually he was caught, but the Bible doesn't tell us what that time period was, he had children and he had descendants. And one of his direct descendants, you could see in the genealogy in the book of Esther, or Kehilat Esther, is Haman. Now, King Shaul was from the tribe of Benjamin. And it's very interesting to know that how God always finishes what he starts, which really leads to what I would call the pattern of completion. Because Esther was a direct descendant of King Saul. If you look at the lineage of Mordecai and Esther, Mordecai was her uncle, it tells us that she was from Kish and Shimei, and she was a Benjaminite, a direct descendant of King Shaul. So God's intention, those centuries before, was that for a person from the line of King Shaul, or Saul himself, a Benjaminite, would destroy the line or the Amalekites. And so centuries later, God fulfilled what he had started through King Saul, and a descendant, a Benjaminite, was the one who God used to kill the Amalekites. The one thing that the book of Esther is not clear on, and we'll talk about that later, is that there probably still are people who are descendants of the Amalekites, and in particular, many of the leaders of the present-day Iran. People don't realize that Iranians are not Arabs, and I believe that they're considered Indo-Europeans who follow, one of the movements within Islam. So what I'm suggesting, and others have suggested, is that the Amalekites, the present-day Amalekites, following the pattern of the history of the Bible, have reappeared in the nation of Iran. That's just an educated guess, and probably tempered with a little bit of speculation, but nevertheless, the truth that's presented in the Bible, that the Amalekites are the eternal enemies of the Jewish people and God's people. And you could make the logical extension that if the Amalekites are the enemies of the Jewish people, and you are connected to Israel, grafted into the olive tree, they're your enemies as well.